Welcome everybody. How are you? How are you? Now I think time is up. It's better to introduce Dr. Lingenfelter to all of you. I'm really great privilege to introduce the famous world-class Christian leader to all of you. And also he came to Sherwood to run this seminar on this cross-cultural mission leadership. And this is not only first time, whenever the global level of lecture visit Arilag, we just offer this open seminar to everybody. So this is, I don't know, second or third, fourth times, and also this very, very happy. But one thing I made a mistake. I didn't know that this week is Milton period. But thank you for your coming. Even during this Milton period, I'm sure you're like, it will be really worth of you spending your time and energy tonight. God knows that. Okay? Thank you so much. Dr. Lingenfelter, he was Vice President of Biola University, as well as also Provost, also Senior Vice President of Fuller Seminary. Recently he retired. And other than that, he served the SIL International for more than 3 decades as academic advisor and consultant, the research fellow, other things. He wrote many books and articles. Also, yesterday I checked, 4 books are translated in Korean language already. So also his book is very, very influential to this Korean missionary and world global mission leaders. The rest of things I want to leave those things into his hand. He will lead and he will introduce whatever lies to all of you too. When it comes over here, why don't you give a big hand?
Well, good evening. I'm glad to be here with you tonight, and I thank you for coming this busy time. I've pondered what I might share with you, and I've decided to tell you a story, and then draw some reflections on that story that was part of my research in a place that's very dear to my colleague, Dr. Jason Chung, Papua New Guinea. I was in Papua New Guinea in 2006 for the conference of SIL there, and I had an opportunity to talk to many of the members at SIL during that conference. One of those members was a man who does community development among the national people in that area. And he told me a story, and I would like to share that story with you tonight and then reflect on it. It is about cross-cultural leadership, but it's a very specific story about leadership in Papua New Guinea. As I think about this story, it's really a story about strawberries. And I don't know if you like strawberries or not, but people like strawberries in New Guinea. They grow them there. And it just so happened that this man, we'll call him JT, was walking down along the river one day, and he saw strawberries floating down the river. And he realized, wow, this is market day, and the farmers came and brought their strawberries to market, and they didn't sell them all. And so rather than carry them all the way home, they just threw them in the river. And so he thought, well, they must have extra strawberries, and so I'll go talk to them. And so he went up into the village where they came from, and he had a conversation with them, and he found that this was a wonderful opportunity for them, because they had land, they could grow strawberries, the climate was perfect, and they were producing more than they could sell in this missionary town called Ukarumpa. And so he said, would you be interested in shipping strawberries to Port Moresby? And they said, oh yes, that would be wonderful. And so Jim decided that what he would do is he would train them, work with them, with the goal of helping them get some new income. Because these men lived in a village that was a Christian village. They had the Bible in their language, they attended church, and they were people that were professing Christians. And so he thought that he might help them, and he decided to train them and help them to market strawberries in Port Moresby. Now this particular task was one that Jim was good at. He understood what was needed. And so he basically began to teach these men how to build shipping boxes, how to package strawberries in smaller boxes to fit in the big boxes, and how to get them ready to fly to Port Moresby twice a week. SIL has an aviation arm called JARS, and those planes have to go back and forth to Port Moresby, and oftentimes they have surplus space, and it's expensive to fly a plane, and so this would be good for the farmers and good for SIL, because the farmers selling strawberries would pay for the gasoline to fly them to Port Moresby, and of course they could sell their strawberries in Port Moresby and make income. And so this was a good win for SIL, it was a win for the farmers. They could make money, they could sell strawberries, people in Port Moresby could get strawberries from the highlands, that was good, and it was a nice thing. And so as Jim did this, it worked. They actually were able to grow the strawberries, package them, ship them, and they got new income. Not only did they get new income, he paid them every time they shipped, but they also managed, as a cooperative, to have a profit at the end of the year. And so this was something that Jim was excited about, the farmers were excited about, and it was a good thing for them. Everyone was happy, until we have what we call the bad berry crisis. Now, the bad berry crisis was when some farmers needed a little bit more money this week than they had good berries for. And so instead of packaging the best berries in these boxes for Port Moresby, they would put some in that were getting soft. And then they would put better berries on top. Well, by the time the strawberries got to Port Moresby, the soft ones underneath were really soft. They were so soft that you couldn't pick them up. They would fall apart in your hands. And they were just not good berries to sell. Well, the people in Port Moresby were not happy. If you went to the market there and you bought some strawberries and you took them home and you could only pick up the ones from the top and all the rest under were mush, that was not a good thing. And so they complained to the man who sold them the strawberries. The man had to give them their money back. Well, that made him unhappy, and so he said to JT, look, if you're going to give me bad berries, I'm not going to buy them anymore. So JT has a crisis. What are we going to do? He talks to the men about this. You know, we can't have bad strawberries. You have to put in good ones. If you send bad ones, we can't sell anymore. And they said, well, we can't do anything about it. He said, what do you mean you can't do anything about it? Well, you know, we don't know who's doing it, and we don't know who put those bad berries in there, and how are we going to stop it? And so Jim said, okay, from now on, I'm going to mark everybody's box. I'm going to put your name on the box. And in Port Moresby, when they find bad berries, they'll know who sold the bad berries, and then we won't buy strawberries from you anymore. And so everybody's name was on their boxes, and they kept shipping to Port Moresby, and every once in a while, bad berries would come up. And when the bad berries came up, then that farmer could no longer sell berries, and they wouldn't buy his berries and ship them to Port Moresby. Now this created mistrust. The farmers were frustrated, they didn't trust each other, they were happy that Jim was selling strawberries, but Jim didn't trust them, and so the project began to have difficulties. And Jim wasn't quite sure how to deal with those difficulties. Well, the question really was a question of leadership. And that's why we get to cross-cultural leadership. You see, as long as Jim managed this project, it worked. Jim was from the United States. He was a community development guy. He trained people to do this. And as long as he was in charge, he marked boxes, he stopped buying berries, and okay, people then the bad guys were cut out, and it was fine. But you know, Jim has this custom that missionaries have of going home on furlough. And Jim said to them, you know, I'm going home next year for a year on furlough, and one of you guys has to take over. And they said, we can't do it. We can't do it. And Jim said, you have to. There's no choice. I'm not going to be here. And you have to take the leadership. So I will train you, and you can do this. And so he chose 2 men. And he began to train them. He trained them how to manage the money. He trained them how to mark the boxes. He trained them in all the things needed to prepare the boxes and ship them to Port Moresby. And when it came time for him to go on furlough, they were in charge. Well, in 3 months, the project closed. Completely closed. Because they said, we can't do it. And they couldn't. Men began putting bad berries in again. They weren't able to confront them. And so the project collapsed. Now Jim was very disappointed. I mean, Jim worked for 3 years getting this project going. He basically trained them all. He taught them what to do. He basically got them organized. And then for 2 years they ran the project. And this seemed to be a good thing and would be beneficial to them. And in 3 months it was all gone. And so he said, wow, what happened? Now when we think about this kind of a project, one of the things we always need to ask is what were the value conflicts? Things don't fall apart for no reason. There are always underlying value conflicts. And Jim didn't think about that. He didn't study that. He didn't probe into it and try to understand what was going on. And so this was a challenge that he didn't address. The question then is, did JT lead or did he mislead? Now I want to take a minute and pause for reflection. What does it mean to mislead? If you think about that, most of us would think that that means to deceive. To mislead somebody, to deceive them. But I'm not using the word that way. I'm using the word in a different way. I'm talking about leading people in a way that doesn't work. Leading them to do something in a way that you think is effective and you think is good, but it's not. It doesn't really work. And so mislead in that sense is not deceiving them, but deceiving yourself. You think